Hi everybody, my name is Adam Dovik and I'm an AMI trained Montessori teacher. I spent 4 years working in the class, but then recently I spent a whole year traveling around the world, visiting as many Montessori classes as I could to try to learn about how to authentically apply the Montessori method. I ended up visiting over 100 Montessori classes in 22 countries, and in this series of videos, I'm going to try my best to explain what I learned. I hope you enjoy. The first chapter is called The Most Amazing Classes Prioritize Community Over Work. This is a big thing that I noticed in my observations. It took me about 50 different classes before I finally figured it out. I saw lots of very high engagement classes, but certain ones felt so different, and I couldn't find the X factor that indicated why that was. I rated classes on a multitude of factors like the guide's firmness, their warmth, their passion, the environment's size and setup, and finally the children's ground rules and grace and courtesy skills. But these metrics were not accounting for such a huge difference that I saw between classes with high engagement. Then it suddenly hit me. Some guides prioritize work first and community building second. Other guides prioritize community building first and work second. Let me give some examples of things that I often see in very work-first classes. Socializing during the work period is extremely limited or completely prohibited. The adults in the class are very firm, policing the class at all times. The children are noticeably on guard, like they're walking on eggshells. Children without work are treated like they're doing something wrong. Children almost never help each other with anything, mostly ignoring one another. The children are told about every mistake they make, often in a way that shames them. Children rarely laugh or smile during the work period, rather, they have blank faces. The children working seem unnaturally quiet much of the time. The children are almost always working, at least 80% or more of them. The children's focus is almost always on the adults, not the other children around them. Children are very often seen sitting with work which they clearly have no interest in. The adults are most often very close to the children when they are working. Now, I know not all of those sound that terrible, but now I want to contrast those things with things that I typically see in very community-first classes. The children are relaxed and they socialize like they are a family. Laughter and joy are extremely common. Children have truly deep friendships. Wandering and relaxing during the work period are respected as much as working, but within limits. Collaboration between children and peer problem solving is extremely common. The guide and the assistant show a deep care for who a child is, not just what they're doing. Children making mistakes or even behaving terribly are still treated kindly by the adults. There is always a hum of activity, similar to a market. Not crazy, but quite busy. 20 to 80% of the children might be engaged with work. It varies greatly. Children are encouraged to put away work that they have no interest in. The adults make an effort to disappear in order to give the children more independence. I want to clarify that although the work first class may seem very strict and like you have a drill sergeant as a teacher, I've actually seen some work first classes that the guides were very kind and gentle. But the most important things are two of those things I mentioned: Children without work are treated like they're doing something wrong, and the children rarely, if ever, help each other. Those are the biggest signs of a work first class, even if the adults are kind and gentle. So, work first classes and community first classes can both be very successful. Both classes can have high levels of engagement, concentration, academic skills, normalization, etc. But I feel like the route to success is completely different, and I argue that a community first environment is closer to what Maria Montessori wrote about. Let's consider one of her most famous quotes. The greatest sign of success for a teacher is to be able to say, "The children are now working as if I did not exist." Which does this sound like? Are the children working for the love of it, or are they scared of being told off for not working? Are they working because they simply can't help themselves, or just because they've been taught work is what we do in class? Are they working because of an inner desire to do what interests them, or have they just put something in front of them just to look busy? I've seen what happens in work first classes when the adult leaves the room or turns their back, and it is not working as if the guy didn't exist. It is a very noticeable change in the class and a lowering of engagement. This logically follows for 3 reasons. First is that the adult's external force to keep the children quiet and working has suddenly been removed. 2, well, there's a good chance that the children anxiously just put anything in front of them to seem busy, not what truly interests them. And 3, the children have been unable to socialize for so long that they just need to do it absolutely as soon as possible. In a successful community first class, this sudden change is less likely because the adult's presence is not needed to keep the children quiet or working. This is done through engagement, established ground rules, and grace and courtesy skills, not through policing. Second is the guide allows for wandering and disengagement in the class for long enough for the children to find something truly engaging to work on. And third is there's no buildup of social energy because the children are allowed to socialize peacefully between their work and also while they're working a little bit. Of course, the goal of a Montessori guide is not just to make the children work as if I didn't exist. It is to have a successful class, which is wonderful in so many ways. And I can tell you for a fact that when you spend time in a community first class, that you can feel the love and joy in everything they do. It's a wonderful place to be, and you just want to stay there for a while and just enjoy being there. Work first classes, on the other hand, they feel militaristic, even like a police state. They're unnatural and odd, and the children seem not like children, but like nervous work robots. However, there's a gigantic piece of bad news that I have to tell you. Community first classes are much more difficult to run successfully than work first classes. How do I know that? Well, because I've seen many community first classes fall extremely short of normalization despite having amazing ways of communicating kindly with the children and respecting their childish ways and showing them deep love. However, I've seen highly successful work first classes that have none of those things. It's sad. The children being so overwhelmed with fear of being called out for the tiniest mistakes can just make them work to avoid that. Also, despite not having necessarily chosen something interesting, they likely have one of Montessori's perfect materials in front of them, so they inevitably might become engaged and concentrate in constructive learning. Thirdly, a police state is an awfully quiet environment, which is low in distractions and good for concentration. The community first class requires children to truly be prepared to form a cohesive, cooperative community that facilitates a work culture without constant threats and micromanagement from the adults. The children, unpredictable as they are, will be much more in charge of the class and their learning, which is very difficult. To create something like that, the guide must not rule the children, but observe their needs and guide them towards being peaceful with great patience before they can truly be able to work together as a community. It is not something that all guides can do well, but it is possible, and those that can do it build communities rich in love, collaboration, and truly independent children. Successful community first classes are, in my view, leaps and bounds ahead of work first classes, despite both of them having quite a lot of success. Now, I know that I use some pretty strong language when I'm talking about work first classes, but I just want to clarify I'm not judging anybody for running their class in that type of way. It is a very effective way to run a class, and most guides don't know that there's an alternative. Having recently returned to working in the classroom, I know it's about 100 times harder to actually utilize a strategy in the classroom rather than just hearing about it. And to expect guides to apply a strategy they've never even heard of is just obviously unreasonable. So keep in mind that my strong wording is directed at the work first strategies themselves, and not at all should be taken as judgment at the guides that use them. With that being said, I do encourage all guides that have the information to try to create a community first class as best as they can. The next chapter that I'm going to make is a subchapter of this where I talk about a checklist that you can use to assess whether your class is work first, community first, or somewhere in between, and also exactly what you can do to plan for the future of your class in order to make it more community first, using specific strategies to make sure that it doesn't create too much chaos during the transition. Hi everybody, I hope you like this chapter. I picked it as the first one because I think it's a pretty original idea, and it's something that I really look for whenever I observe in a new class, because it's really influential on how the class flows and how authentic it actually is, at least in my opinion. If anybody has any comments about the idea, how I made the video, anything that I can do to make the next one better, then I'm definitely open to criticism, critique, advice. Let me know what you think, and I'm happy to hear what you have to say. Take care.